Right. You know what I mean? And I said, he was a stickler for perfection.
What happened to Maurice White, the man behind Earth, Wind and Fire? He was a music legend, but he kept a terrible secret. Why didn't he tell the world about his struggle? Maurice gave people joy with his songs, but inside, he was fighting something painful.
Well, my major influences came basically from the church and from the streets.
What was he hiding? And why did he keep it secret until the end? Let's talk about the hidden truth behind his death.
Well, there was a vision I had of planetaria, Egyptology, all these things that come together, and they grow with time.
Maurice White was the heart and soul of Earth, Wind and Fire. He was not just a singer. He was also a songwriter, producer, and the mastermind behind the group's sound. Some say he was ahead of his time. He took a small dream and turned it into something timeless. He believed in music that made people feel alive. His vision was so powerful that it changed the music industry in ways no one expected. Maurice was born in Memphis, Tennessee. He grew up in South Memphis with his grandmother. Life wasn't always easy, but he found happiness in music. He went to school with other future stars like Booker T. Jones and David Porter. This is where his love for music began.
I was a jazz musician as a kid, and I learned to play the blues and jazz and gospel and that whole thing.
In high school, he started playing drums and quickly became very talented. His passion for music pushed him to chase bigger dreams.
Some of my major influences was like people like Ray Charles, and his whole group, the way he had put it together, and of course Miles Davis, John Coltrane.
After finishing high school, Maurice moved to Chicago to study music. He worked hard, playing drums on the side to support himself. He got a job at Chess Records, a famous recording studio. There, he played for music legends like Etta James, Billy Stewart, and Willie Dixon. It was an incredible learning experience that helped him grow as a musician.
Well, it all started back in Chicago, and during the time I lived in Chicago, I was involved with a number of different activities.
In 1967, Maurice joined the Ramsey Lewis Trio. He spent 3 years with them, learning more about performing and how to create a great show. It was during this time that he discovered a special instrument called the kalimba, an African thumb piano. He fell in love with its sound. Later, this instrument became an important part of Earth, Wind and Fire's music. But life was not easy for Maurice and other black people living in the city. There was a lot of racism, and many black people were treated unfairly. Maurice was just a young boy at the time, trying to earn some money by delivering newspapers. One evening, as the sun was going down, Maurice was delivering newspapers in a white neighborhood. Back then, it was dangerous for black people to be in certain places, especially after dark. While he was doing his job, 2 white police officers stopped their car and walked up to him. Instead of asking him a simple question, they started calling him mean and ugly names, but they did not stop at just words. They attacked him for no reason at all. The officers hit him and hurt him badly. Maurice was just a teenager and could not fight back. The worst part was that when they were done, they simply got back in their car and drove away, laughing as if nothing had happened. Maurice was left alone on the street, shaking in fear. He was sweating and realized that he had wet himself because he was so scared. He stood there in the cool night, not knowing what to do. That night changed Maurice's life. He decided that if he ever got stopped by police again, he would run away as fast as he could. The fear stayed with him for a long time. It was not something he could easily forget. Even after he became a famous musician, that horrible memory stayed with him. It was just one of many struggles he faced as a black man in America. But Maurice did not let that night stop him from chasing his dream. Instead, he worked hard, made beautiful music, and became one of the greatest musicians in history.
I put a group of people together for his writing songs and discovering new musical trends and stuff like that. So that was the beginning of Earth, Wind and Fire.
Maurice White had a dream. He wanted to create a band with a unique sound that mixed different styles of music. In 1969, he moved to Los Angeles to make this dream come true. He started a band called the Salty Peppers with two talented musicians, Wade Flemings and Don Whitehead. Maurice played percussion and kalimba, a small African instrument. The group recorded a song called Your Love is Life for Capitol Records, hoping it would be a hit. Unfortunately, the song did not become popular, and the band struggled to find success. Maurice did not give up. He believed in his music and wanted to try again. In 1971, he signed a new contract with Warner Brothers. He also decided to change the band's name to Earth, Wind, and Fire. The name came from his astrological chart and showed his deep connection to music and spirituality. He wanted his band to be different, blending jazz, rock, and soul into something fresh and exciting. The original members included Michael Beale on guitar, Leslie Drayton, Chester Washington, and Alex Thomas on horns, Sherry Scott on vocals, and percussionist Phillard Williams. Under Warner Brothers, Earth, Wind, and Fire released two albums. The first album, Earth, Wind, and Fire, came out in 1970, and the second one, The Need of Love, was released in 1971.
Build yourself a true romance.
Worked on the soundtrack for Sweet Sweetback's Badass song, an important independent film by Melvin Van Peebles. However, Maurice was not happy with how Warner Brothers handled the band. The label focused on marketing them as a jazz group, but Maurice wanted something bigger. He wanted to mix different music styles to create something universal.
My major influences came basically from the church and from the streets.
Maurice decided to make big changes. He left Warner Brothers and signed with Columbia Records. He also changed the band's lineup. Some original members left and new musicians joined. The new members included singer Philip Bailey, guitarist Johnny Graham, percussionist Al McKay, and Maurice's younger brother Verdine White, who played bass. This new version of Earth, Wind, and Fire was ready to take on the world. With Columbia Records, the band started gaining more success. They released the album Last Days in Time in 1972, followed by Head to the Sky in 1973. This album went gold and had hit songs like Evil and the title track, Head to the Sky. In 1974, they released Open Our Eyes, which went platinum. It included songs like Mighty Mighty and Kalimba Story. That same year, they worked with jazz musician Ramsey Lewis on his album Sun Goddess, which became very popular. In 1975, Earth, Wind, and Fire had their big breakthrough with the album That's the Way of the World. This album had their first #1 hit, Shining Star. The song was loved by fans everywhere and even won them their first Grammy Award. This success made them one of the biggest and most respected bands of the time. The band kept releasing hit albums throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s.
Because basically, we're a jazz band, and we converted a jazz band into a pop band, so it covers all areas.
In the mid-80s, things started to fall apart within Earth, Wind, and Fire. The band had been hugely successful for years, but not everyone was happy. Many of the band members felt frustrated because their ideas were not being considered. They wanted to be part of the decision-making process, but Maurice White, the leader of the band, had full control. He did not want to share that control with anyone else.
We wanted to shoot after being universal. Being universal means appealing to everyone. So that's what that's all about.
Maurice White later explained the situation in his book, My Life with Earth, Wind, and Fire. He said, "As time went on, I believed that my clarity about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it became a source of some of their frustrations. This means that he had a clear vision for the band, but his bandmates felt left out."
We gotta know everybody's parts. So it caused me to listen very closely to what was going on musically. So it put me very close to the music and the interpretation of what everybody else was playing.
Maurice tried to fix things by meeting with each band member individually. He listened to their concerns and tried to calm them down, but this did not always work. Some members complained directly to Maurice, while others talked to each other behind his back. There were times when arguments broke out. Some of these arguments were about music, but others were personal. The tension in the band kept growing. The situation got worse after the band released their album Electric Universe in 1983. The album was a huge failure. Fans did not like it and it did not sell well. This was a big blow to the band. Then, without any warning, Maurice White made a shocking decision. He announced that Earth, Wind & Fire was going on an indefinite break. He did not discuss it with the band members first. He simply made the decision on his own. For the other members, this was devastating news. They had spent most of their lives as musicians in Earth, Wind & Fire. They had no other jobs or sources of income lined up. According to Philip Bailey, another member of the band, the breakup was a disaster. In his book Shining Star, Bailey said, "For the rest of the band, the breakup was a nightmare. Some members lost their homes and fortunes, and some went into counseling after suffering nervous breakdowns. Even Maurice's brothers weren't safe. Maurice and Verdine weren't speaking to each other, and Freddie had moved on." Percussionist Ralph Johnson was especially affected by the breakup. He later told CBS News how hard it was for him. He said, "Yeah, cause this is all we knew, this is all we had." So when somebody kind of pulls that rug out, you're like, now you've got to rethink your whole program. In other words, he had spent his whole life playing music, and now he had to figure out what to do next. Without the band, Johnson had to take regular jobs to survive. First, he worked in construction. Then he got a job as a salesman at Federated Stereo. It was a tough time for him and for many of the other band members. The sudden breakup of Earth, Wind & Fire was a painful experience for everyone involved. Maurice White had his reasons for making the decision, but his bandmates suffered greatly because of it. They lost not just their jobs, but also their sense of identity and purpose. Furthermore, the latter years of Maurice White's life were entangled in a legal controversy. Allegations surfaced that he was being sued for purportedly withholding substantial sums of money from the late Charles Stepney, the producer behind some of Earth, Wind & Fire's most significant hits. A peculiar twist to this legal saga is that Charles Stepney passed away 36 years prior to the lawsuit being filed. At the heart of the dispute are the contributions of Charles Stepney, who played a pivotal role in shaping the musical landscape of Earth, Wind & Fire, responsible for producing hits such as Shining Star, Mighty Mighty, Devotion, and Sing a Song. From 1974 until his untimely death in 1976, Stepney's creative imprint left an indelible mark on the band's iconic sound. However, a recent lawsuit, as reported by TMZ, claims that Stepney's children discovered that their father never received any royalty compensation for his producer work on these acclaimed Earth, Wind, and Fire hits, even during his lifetime. The legal action targets Maurice White and Sony Music Holdings, Inc., seeking reparation in the form of a substantial financial settlement. The Stepney family contends that they are entitled to retroactive royalty payments dating back to 1974, encompassing the entire period of Charles Stepney's contributions to Earth, Wind, and Fire's musical legacy. Maurice White was not just a great musician, he also worked with many famous artists. He played the drums for Minnie Riperton's first album. Minnie had a beautiful voice, and her album became well loved by fans. Maurice also helped produce an album for Ramsey Lewis, a talented piano player. This album became a big success, reaching high spots on music charts. People loved its mix of jazz and soul music. Maurice also worked with a musician named Eumir Deodato. He helped create songs for Deodato's album, which was loved by jazz fans. Maurice was also an executive producer for a music group called Pockets. The group released an album that became very popular among R&B fans. Maurice loved helping new artists shine. He even sang a duet with Denise Williams on a song from the band Weather Report's album. That album became a #1 hit on the jazz music charts. Maurice didn't stop there. He appeared on another Ramsey Lewis album, showing their long-lasting friendship in music. He also worked with gospel singer Walter Hawkins. Walter's album was even nominated for a Grammy, which is a big honor in the music world. Maurice also helped write a song for Barry Manilow, a famous singer known for his heartfelt songs. Barry's album became a big hit and was certified platinum, meaning it sold millions of copies. Maurice also worked with the band Tubes and helped produce an album for Jennifer Holliday, another Grammy-nominated artist. Maurice later worked with the legendary singer Barbra Streisand. He produced her album, which became a huge success. It was certified platinum, showing how much people loved it. He continued working with Ramsey Lewis, helping him with another album that became popular in the jazz world. Maurice even played on an album by Lee Ritenour, a well-known jazz guitarist. Maurice then co-produced an album for a group called Pieces of a Dream. This album also became a hit on the jazz and soul music charts. Maurice worked with Neil Diamond, another famous singer, and helped produce one of his albums. This album also received a gold certification. He also helped the R&B band Atlantic Starr create one of their biggest albums. The album was loved by many and was certified platinum. Maurice didn't just produce music. He also made guest appearances. He played percussion on an album by Ramsey Lewis and helped co-produce it. He later worked with El DeBarge, a popular R&B singer, on one of his albums. Maurice collaborated with a Japanese band called Dreams Come True. He worked on 2 songs, one of which was featured in an animated movie. He continued working with Ramsey Lewis, producing another album that became a success on the jazz charts. Maurice also appeared on an album by Marcus Miller, another jazz musician. He helped Marcus create an album that reached high positions on the jazz charts. Maurice then helped a jazz group called Urban Knights produce their first album, which featured several famous musicians. This album became a big success in both the US and the UK. Maurice later started his own record label. He helped produce another album for Urban Knights, which also became a hit. The album featured talented musicians, including jazz saxophonist Naji. Maurice also worked with a British girl group called Cleopatra, helping them create an album that did well in the UK. Their album even received a silver certification. He continued working with jazz musicians and produced an album for saxophonist Paul Taylor. That album became very popular in the jazz world. Maurice also worked with jazz saxophonist Kirk Whalum. He appeared on Kirk's album, adding his musical touch. Maurice also collaborated with a French jazz band called No Jazz. He worked on 2 songs with them, one of which featured his longtime friend Stevie Wonder. It was a special moment because it was the first time they worked together on music. Maurice was also behind a tribute album for his own band, Earth, Wind & Fire. The album featured artists like Chaka Khan, Kirk Franklin, and Angie Stone. The album did well on the R&B music charts. Some of the songs from the album were even nominated for Grammy Awards. Maurice continued working with talented artists, including jazz musician Brian Culbertson. He helped produce an album that became a big success. The album featured famous musicians like Bootsy Collins and Larry Graham. One song from the album even reached #1 on the jazz music charts. Maurice decided to make his own solo album. This album had a mix of dance songs and slow songs. Music critics really liked it. One critic from The Guardian said the album had smooth dance music, good singing, and great sound. Another critic said it sounded a lot like Earth, Wind & Fire's music. Strong, well-made, and full of energy. He also said that White made sure every song was catchy and easy to enjoy. The album became very popular. It reached number 12 on the Billboard music charts for soul albums. One of the most famous songs on the album was a cover of Stand By Me, which was originally sung by Benny King. Maurice White's version of the song had jazz musician Gerald Albright playing the saxophone. The song became a hit. reaching number 6 on the soul music chart and number 11 on the adult contemporary chart. Another song from the album, I Need You, also did well. It reached number 20 on the adult contemporary chart and number 30 on the soul music chart. Many years later, in 2019, an album of Maurice White's old, unreleased songs was released. It was called Manifestation. The songs on the album were written and recorded over many years with his friend and music producer, Preston Glass. Maurice White was also involved in making music for movies and TV shows. He wrote and produced songs for movies like Coming to America and A Low Down Dirty Shame. He also created music for the TV show Life is Wild. In 2006, he worked on a Broadway play called Hot Feet with Morris Hines, the brother of famous dancer Gregory Hines. White worked with songwriter Allie Willis to create new songs for the play. His life and music were even shown in a movie. The actor Khalil Kain played a young Maurice White in the film Baadass. This movie was about how a director named Melvin Van Peebles made a famous film despite many struggles. Maurice White was also recognized for his work in TV. One of his songs, That's the Way of the World, was used as the theme song for the sitcom Hearts of Fire. He won an award for this as a composer. Maurice White was not just about music. He had a family too. He was married and had 3 children, 1 daughter and 2 sons. He had 2 homes in California, one in Carmel Valley and another in Los Angeles. He loved basketball and tennis and had a fun nickname, Reese. His younger half-brother, Verdine White, is still part of Earth, Wind & Fire as a bass player and backup singer. Another brother, Fred, also played with the band for some time but was later removed because of his struggles with drugs. In 2010, Maurice and his bandmates were honored for their work when they were inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. This was a major achievement that showed how important their music was to the industry. Maurice always believed in making music that brought people together. He wanted his songs to inspire and uplift people, and he never lost that passion. Sadly, on February 4th, 2016, Maurice White passed away after battling Parkinson's disease for many years. Even though he is no longer here, his music and influence will never be forgotten. Earth, Wind & Fire songs continue to bring joy to fans all over the world. Their performances, their energy, and their message of love and unity remain as strong as ever. Maurice White's dream of using music to make the world a better place still lives on today. When talking with CBS News, Philip Bailey described what it was like for him to gradually discover that White was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, saying it was a few years that, we walked it down together. It took a lot of courage for him to finally get to the point of really even saying, this is what it is. Because we were all hoping, that it perhaps might be something else. Something that you might be able to be treated with this, that, or the other. Maurice White left behind a great legacy in music. His solo work, movie songs, and time with Earth, Wind & Fire made him one of the most respected musicians in the world.